When one of the richest men in the world became irritated during an important meeting and said something in his own language, he never imagined that anyone there would understand, much less that this someone would be a little girl of only 9 years old, the cleaner's daughter, who not only understood everything but responded, and her response not only silenced the room, it changed the course of 2 lives and even made the most arrogant CEO lose his footing. It was a cold Tuesday morning in a bustling city when Sheikh Al-Ansari, one of the most powerful men, crossed the golden doors of an elegant corporate building. His steps echoed through the Italian marble of the lobby, while men in suits rushed to open elevators and offer coffee. Al-Ansari was not only rich, he was influential in a way few could comprehend. His investment decisions could make or break entire companies. And today, he was there to evaluate if the company deserved to receive $500 million. At 58 years old, Al-Ansari commanded businesses that moved billions worldwide. Unlike many billionaires who were born into wealth, he had started from scratch, selling spices in a marketplace when he was still a teenager. Every dollar in his bank account represented sweat, strategy, and, most importantly, a code of honor he had never broken. William, the CEO of the company, had spent weeks preparing this presentation. A 48-year-old man, educated at a prestigious university, William believed his position gave him the right to treat others as inferiors. He saw employees like Sarah, the cleaner who cleaned his office, as disposable parts of a machine. For William, people like Sarah simply did not exist in the same world he inhabited. The meeting room was perfect, with a mahogany table, Italian leather chairs, and a view that cost a fortune just to contemplate. The executives were all lined up like soldiers, each sporting expensive suits and watches that cost more than Sarah's annual salary. But that morning there was something different. Sarah, 32 years old, was in the building earlier than usual because her daughter's school had cancelled classes. The heating system had broken down during the previous night's snowstorm, and Sarah had no one to take care of Mia. The choice was cruel: miss work and risk being fired, or bring her 9-year-old daughter and hope no one noticed. Sarah chose to bring Mia. She knew William would be furious if he found out, but she had no alternative. 5 years of working at that company had taught Sarah a bitter lesson. To people like William, she was invisible even when she was right in front of him. So maybe today she could keep Mia hidden in the library until the end of the day. Mia was different from any child you've ever met. While her classmates played with dolls or watched cartoons, she spent hours absorbing knowledge like a sponge. The company's library had become her secret refuge. She read among books on world cultures, ancient history, and linguistics. Mia built a world much larger than anyone around her could imagine. The meeting began promptly at 10 a.m. Al-Ansari greeted everyone with the courtesy of a diplomat, but his experienced eyes were already analyzing every detail. 50 years of business had taught the sheikh that a leader's character always revealed itself in the first 15 minutes of any meeting. William began his presentation with the arrogance of someone who believed the sheikh's money was already guaranteed. He spoke about numbers, projections and profits with the excitement of a child showing off new toys. But Al-Ansari perceived something darker behind that performance. The way William addressed his own employees, the thinly disguised contempt in his voice when he mentioned the support staff, and especially the way he had treated the secretary who brought water to the table. "Our profits grew 340% last quarter," William announced, gesturing dramatically as he walked around the room. "With your investment, Sheikh Al-Ansari, we can expand into markets we never dreamed of reaching." Al-Ansari listened in silence, but inside, a storm began to brew. He had seen this type of man thousands of times, people who confused financial success with human superiority. The sheikh knew that investing in William would be like planting seeds in poisoned soil. It was then that the secretary stumbled while serving coffee, spilling a few drops on the mahogany table. William exploded like a volcano. "Incompetent! You can't even serve coffee properly," he yelled, making the young woman tremble with fear. "Call the cleaner to clean up this mess before it stains the wood." Al-Ansari felt his blood boil. In his culture, respecting those who served was a sacred principle. But William wasn't finished. And where is that cleaner anyway? Sarah something? These people are all the same. They're never where they should be when we need them. It was at that moment that Al-Ansari completely lost his patience. Looking directly at William, he murmured in Arabic with a voice full of contempt, "Hata al-rajul laysa siwag mutakabir lastik artiramana." What Al-Ansari said could be translated as, "This man is nothing but an arrogant fool who does not deserve our respect." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone in the room was paralyzed, not understanding what the sheikh had said, but clearly realizing it hadn't been good. William forced a nervous smile, trying to maintain control of the situation. It was then that a sweet, clear voice broke the silence. "Anunaman al-rajul yueamil saididan." All heads turned toward the source of that voice. There, at the meeting room door, was a 9-year-old girl with bright, intelligent eyes and a world history book under her arm. What Mia had said was, "I completely agree with you, sir. This man treats my mother very badly." Al-Ansari, a man who had negotiated with kings and presidents, who had seen wonders on 7 different continents, was absolutely speechless. Not only by the child's perfect fluency in Arabic, but by the courage of a 9-year-old girl defending her mother in front of a room full of powerful executives. William was red with anger and confusion. What is happening here? Who is this child? And what is she doing in my meeting? But Al-Ansari couldn't take his eyes off Mia. In Arabic, he asked gently, "How did you learn my language, little one?" And Mia, with the naturalness of someone talking about the weather, replied in perfect Arabic, "I study alone in the library, Sir Sheikh. I learned Arabic, French, Spanish, Mandarin, German, and Italian. I really like learning about different cultures." The entire room was in absolute shock. The executives exchanged glances, unable to process what they were witnessing. A 9-year-old child, the cleaner's daughter, speaking 6 languages fluently with one of the richest men in the world. Al-Ansari slowly rose from his chair, his eyes shining with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. For the first time in decades, he had found something that completely surprised him. And at that moment, he knew this meeting would take a turn no one in that room could have imagined. Sarah had learned to be invisible long before she started working at the company. Growing up as a woman in difficult neighborhoods had taught her that survival depended on 3 things: hard work, dignity, and the ability to stay off the radar of people who could hurt her. At 32, she carried on her shoulders the weight of broken dreams and the responsibility of raising a brilliant daughter alone. Sarah's story began 15 years ago when she was a 17-year-old with big dreams of studying journalism. Her grades were excellent, and she had received a partial scholarship to a state university. The future looked bright until the day she discovered she was pregnant with her high school boyfriend's child, who had promised to stay by her side forever. He disappeared the first week after Sarah told him about the pregnancy. He simply packed his things and moved to another state, leaving behind only a scribbled note saying he wasn't ready to be a father. Sarah never heard from him again, and Mia grew up knowing practically nothing about the man who fathered her. Sarah's mother, Dorothy, had worked her entire life as a domestic worker to support 5 children alone. When Sarah became pregnant, Dorothy did what she could to help, but her resources were limited. The scholarship was lost, university dreams were indefinitely postponed, and Sarah found herself working 2 different jobs just to pay for diapers and formula. Mia was born on a cold December morning, weighing only a few pounds. Complications during childbirth cost Sarah her savings and left her with medical debts that would take years to pay off. But when she held that tiny being in her arms for the first time, Sarah knew she would make any sacrifice necessary to give her daughter a better life than her own. The first few years were a constant battle. Sarah worked as a waitress during the day and a cleaner at night, sleeping only 4 hours a night to spend time with Mia. She watched other mothers take their children to piano lessons or language courses and felt a pang in her heart, knowing she couldn't even afford a new book. But Mia was different from a baby. While other children cried or slept, she spent hours observing everything around her with intense curiosity. At 2, she was already speaking in complete sentences. At 3, she was reading signs on the street. At 4, she had devoured all the books in the small neighborhood library. Sarah realized she had an extraordinary child on her hands, but also knew she didn't have the resources to adequately nurture that intelligence. It was then that she made the most difficult decision of her life: move to a bigger city and try to get a job that, even if humble, could offer Mia access to better opportunities. The company was hiring cleaning staff when Sarah arrived. The salary wasn't generous, but it came with an unexpected benefit: access to the company library. Sarah had lied in the interview, saying Mia stayed with a babysitter after school. In reality, she brought her daughter secretly to work whenever necessary, and Mia spent hours in the library, absorbing knowledge like a dry sponge. William had hired Sarah 5 years ago, but for him, she was just another name on the payroll. He treated her like furniture, useful when needed, invisible the rest of the time. Sarah had lost count of how many times he had humiliated her in front of other employees, shouting about a stain on the carpet or complaining that she hadn't polished his golf trophy to the proper shine. "These people have no education," she had heard William say to other executives, as if she weren't even there. "It's hard to find cleaning staff who do the job right these days." Every word was like a stab at Sarah's pride, but she swallowed the insult and kept working. She knew she needed that job, and more importantly, she needed Mia to have access to that library. There, her daughter had discovered a world of possibilities that Sarah could never have provided alone. Mia learned languages by watching videos on the library's computer during her lunch breaks. She studied geography by exploring interactive maps and world history through educational documentaries. At 9, she had already read more books than many adults would read in their entire lives. But the most impressive thing was her ability to connect. She didn't just memorize information. She understood cultures, grasped nuances, and developed a deep empathy for people from all corners of the world. Sarah observed her daughter's development with a mixture of pride and concern. Pride because she knew Mia was special in a way few people could recognize. Concern because she didn't know how such a brilliant child could fully flourish in an environment where her own mother was treated like dirt. Sarah's evenings were dedicated entirely to Mia. After working 12 hours cleaning offices, she would come home and help her daughter with homework from the local public school. Mia always finished quickly. The lessons were too easy for her. Then, they spent the rest of the night talking about the things Mia had learned in the library. "Mommy," Mia said one of those nights, "did you know that in Arabic, the word for mother is and that in many cultures, mothers are considered the most important people in the family?" Sarah smiled, stroking her daughter's curly hair. "No, honey, I didn't know that." "Where did you learn that?" "In the library books," Mia replied. "I like to learn about how families work in different places. All mothers work hard to take care of their children, no matter where they live." These conversations were the fuel that kept Sarah going. Every sacrifice, every humiliation, every lost hour of sleep was worth it when she saw Mia's eyes shining with curiosity and intelligence. But Sarah also knew she couldn't protect Mia forever from the cruel reality of how people like William saw people like them. Several times Mia had witnessed scenes of humiliation when she accompanied her mother to work. She saw Sarah being yelled at for mistakes she hadn't made, being blamed for problems beyond her control, being treated as if she was stupid or incompetent. "Why does that man yell at you, Mommy?" Mia had asked once after witnessing William scream at Sarah about a printer that had broken on its own. "Because some people think their position in life gives them the right to treat others badly, honey," Sarah had replied carefully. "But never forget, our dignity doesn't depend on how others treat us. It depends on how we treat ourselves and how we treat others." It was this lesson that Sarah tried to teach every day, that a person's worth is not measured by the amount in their bank account or the title on their business card, that knowledge and kindness are far more valuable treasures than expensive cars or designer clothes, and that, regardless of how the world saw them, they had the right to dream of a better future. On that Tuesday morning, when Sarah brought Mia to work due to school cancellation, she had no idea she was about to witness the day that would change their lives forever. She just hoped to keep her daughter out of sight until the end of the day. But fate had other plans for Sarah and Mia. Al-Ansari had negotiated with kings, presidents, and the most powerful men in the world, but he had never been as genuinely impressed as he was at that moment, looking at a 9-year-old girl who spoke Arabic with the fluency of a diplomat. His 60 years of life and 40 years of business had taught him to recognize exceptional talent. But Mia was something completely out of the ordinary. "Little one," Al-Ansari said in Arabic, crouching down to Mia's eye level, "how did an American child learn to speak my language so perfectly?" Mia smiled with the simplicity of someone sharing something she loved to do. "I like to learn about different cultures, Sir Sheikh. I started by studying Arabic because I wanted to understand the stories of the Middle Eastern countries. Then I found videos of teachers from different countries who taught online for free." Al-Ansari was even more intrigued. A child who learned languages out of pure intellectual curiosity, without a teacher, without pressure, just for the love of knowledge. "And how many languages do you speak?" "6, besides English," Mia replied, now alternating between Arabic and English, so that her mother, who had arrived running and was standing at the door in shock, could follow the conversation. "Arabic, French, Spanish, Mandarin, German, and Italian. I'm starting to learn Russian now." William, who had been paralyzed by the situation until then, exploded. "What the hell is going on here? Sarah, get this child out of here immediately. This is a serious business." "Meeting?" Al-Ansari slowly turned to William, his dark eyes shining with a coldness that made the American CEO take a step back. "Mr. William," the Sheikh said in English with a dangerously calm voice, "this young lady is demonstrating more education and intelligence in 5 minutes than you have demonstrated in an entire hour." Turning to Mia, Al-Ansari continued in Arabic, "You said this man treats your mother badly. Can you tell me what happens?" Mia looked at her mother, who shook her head, discreetly, asking her daughter not to cause trouble, but Al-Ansari noticed the exchange of glances and insisted gently, "Don't be afraid, dear. Just tell me." With the maturity of someone much older, Mia replied in Arabic, "He yells at my mother when things break on their own. He calls her incompetent in front of other people. Once he purposely threw papers on the floor just to force my mother to kneel and pick them up, while he laughed with other men in suits." Al-Ansari felt a wave of anger run through his body. In his culture, humiliating a hard-working person was one of the most serious and unimaginable offenses. He had built his empire by treating every employee with dignity, from the security guard to the vice president. For him, a leader's character was measured precisely by how he treated those who depended on him. "And your mother never complained?" Al-Ansari asked, still in Arabic. "My mother needs this job to support me," Mia explained with a sad wisdom. "She said that some people think having money gives them the right to be cruel, but that our dignity doesn't depend on how others treat us." Al-Ansari looked at Sarah, who was at the door with tears in her eyes, clearly mortified by the situation. He could see in her the same silent strength he recognized in his own mother, who had raised 7 children working as a seamstress. He could see the determination of a woman who had sacrificed everything to give her daughter a chance at a better life. Mia Alansari said, switching to English to include Sarah in the conversation. "Where do you study all these languages?" "In the company library," Mia replied. "My mum brings me here when there's no school, and I use the computers to watch educational videos and read digital books. There's a very good Chinese program that teaches Mandarin and YouTube channels by French teachers that explain grammar in a fun way." Alansari was impressed, not only by the girl's intelligence, but by her initiative. "And your teachers at school? Do they know about your talents?" Mia shrugged. "School is too easy. I finish my lessons in 5 minutes and then I get bored. Once I tried to help a classmate who was having difficulty with math, but the teacher said I was disrupting the class. This child is a genius," Alansari murmured to himself in Arabic, but loud enough for Mia to hear. "I'm not a genius, sir," she replied, also in Arabic. "I just really like to learn. My mom always says that knowledge is the only thing no one can take from us." Alansari smiled, the first genuinely warm expression he had shown since entering that room. "Your mother is a very wise woman." William, who had remained silent throughout this exchange, finally found his voice. "Sheikh Alansari, I apologize for this interruption. I will arrange for this employee to be dismissed immediately for disturbing our meeting." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Alansari slowly stood up, his imposing stature making William seem even smaller. "Mr. William," the sheikh said with a voice that carried decades of authority, "during this morning you have demonstrated arrogance, disrespect, and a complete lack of basic human values. This child, in 5 minutes, has shown more class, intelligence, and dignity than you have in your entire presentation." The executives exchanged nervous glances. They could feel that the meeting had taken a dangerous turn, but none of them had the courage to intervene. Alansari continued, "In my culture we have a saying, the person who plants seeds of kindness will always reap a forest of blessings. You, Mr. William, have planted only seeds of cruelty." Turning to Mia and Sarah, Alansari said gently, "May I speak with the two of you in private for a moment?" Sarah finally found her voice. "Sir, I apologize for the interruption. Mia shouldn't have—" "Don't apologize," Alansari interrupted. "Your daughter has just shown me something extraordinary. She reminded me why I started investing in the first place, to find and nurture true potential." Alansari looked around the room, his eyes passing over each executive before returning to William. "Gentlemen, this meeting is over. I will not invest a single cent in this company as long as it is led by a man who treats his employees as disposable objects." The silence that followed was deafening. William was white as a sheet, realizing that 500 million had just slipped through his fingers because of his own arrogance. "But Sheikh Alansari," stammered one of the vice presidents, "surely we can resolve this misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," Alansari replied firmly. "There is only a matter of character, and character, gentlemen, is the only currency that truly matters in business." Alansari turned to Mia and Sarah. "Ladies, it would be an honor if you could accompany me for a more private conversation. I have a proposal that might interest you." And at that moment, as William watched, helplessly, Alansari extended his hand to a cleaner and her 9-year-old daughter, treating them with more respect than he had shown anyone in that room all morning. William felt the world collapse when Alansari refused to shake his outstretched hand and walked toward the door, accompanied by Sarah and Mia. 500 million was walking out of his company, and all because of a cleaner and her daughter. The humiliation burned in his chest like acid, but the despair was even worse. "Sheikh, please," William shouted, running after the billionaire. "Don't let a small misunderstanding destroy such a promising business opportunity." Alansari stopped in the hallway and slowly turned around. His eyes carried a coldness William had never seen before. Misunderstanding, Mr. William. I saw exactly who you really are. There is no confusion in my mind. But, sir, William continued, his voice growing sharper with despair, Sarah is just a cleaner. She doesn't represent the values of this company. I can fire her right now if that solves the problem. The words came out of William's mouth before he could realize how terrible they were. Sarah felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. There she was, being offered as a sacrifice to save a business she didn't even know existed an hour ago. Mia took a step forward, protectively placing herself in front of her mother. At only 9 years old, she displayed a dignity that shamed all the adults present. Sir, she said directly to William, alternating between English and Arabic so that Al-Ansari could fully understand, my mother works more in a day than you work in a week. She gets here at 5 a.m. and doesn't leave until after 7 p.m. She cleans up the mess you make, fixes the things you break, and never complains, even when you treat her as if she were invisible. Al-Ansari observed the scene with growing admiration for the girl's courage. Mia continued, you wear a fancy suit and drive a car that costs more than our entire house. But my mother has something you will never have. She has honor. William turned red with anger. How dare you speak to me like that, you little... Finish that sentence, Al-Ansari said in a dangerously low voice, and I guarantee you will regret it for the rest of your life. The executives who had followed the discussion into the hallway were terrified. James, the financial vice president, tried to intervene. Sheikh Al-Ansari, with all due respect, perhaps we can resolve this situation more civilly. Civilly. Al-Ansari repeated the word as if it were poison in his mouth. Where was the civility when this man humiliated a working mother in front of her own daughter? Where was the civility when he threw papers on the floor just to see a dignified woman kneel to pick them up? James blinked, confused. I didn't know about that. Of course you didn't know, Al-Ansari said. People like you never know how lower employees are treated because you choose not to see. It's easier to pretend that cruelty doesn't exist when you're not the victims. Sarah, who had remained silent throughout the discussion, finally found her voice. Sir Sheikh, she said with a silent dignity that silenced everyone in the hallway. I accept the way I am treated here because I need to support my daughter, but I do not accept my daughter being disrespected for defending what she believes in. She looked directly at William. Mr. William, I have worked for you for 5 years. I have never missed a day. I never complained when you yelled at me for things that weren't my fault. I never responded when you treated me as if I was stupid or lazy. But I will not allow you to speak to my daughter the way you speak to me. William was desperate. He could feel his career slipping through his fingers. Sarah, be reasonable. You know I was just stressed with this important meeting. I never had anything personal against you. Nothing personal, Mia interrupted, her voice filled with mature indignation. You called my mother incompetent in front of clients. You said these people are all the same. You made my mother work on a holiday because you said people like her don't even have family to visit. Every word from Mia was like a stab at William's pride, but it also exposed to Al-Ansari and the other executives a pattern of behavior they could no longer ignore. Al-Ansari crouched down to Mia's level. How many times have you seen your mother treated like this? Many times, Mia replied honestly. But my mother always told me not to react because we need this job. She said our dignity comes from within, not from how others treat us. Al-Ansari stood up and looked at Sarah with deep respect. Ms. Sarah, you have raised an extraordinary daughter, and you have done so while maintaining your dignity under circumstances that would have broken lesser people. Turning to William and the executives, Al-Ansari declared, Gentlemen, you have just witnessed something, a rare, true greatness of character, and it did not come from any of you. William made one last desperate attempt. Sheikh, I can compensate Sarah. I can give her a raise, better working conditions, anything you deem appropriate. Al-Ansari shook his head in disgust. You still don't understand, do you? It's not about money. It's about who you are as a person. and you have just fully revealed yourself. Al-Ansari looked at his gold watch. Gentlemen, it's 11:30. In less than 2 hours, my office will send a communique to all investment firms about this experience. Word spreads quickly in our circles about companies that cannot be trusted. William's face turned white as a sheet. He knew Al-Ansari had enough influence to destroy the company's reputation in the international market. Please, that's not necessary. Don't worry, Al-Ansari said with a cold smile. I will only tell the truth, that I found a company led by a man without character who treats dedicated employees like trash and who does not deserve any serious investment. Al-Ansari turned to Sarah and Mia. Ladies, there's a cafeteria on the ground floor of this building. Would you like to join me for lunch? I have a proposal that might interest you, and I prefer to discuss it away from this toxic atmosphere. Sarah hesitated. Sir, I'm still working. I can't just... She's fired anyway, William shouted, his composure finally completely shattering. Sarah, you're fired. I want you to pack your things and leave. The building immediately. The silence that followed was deafening. Al-Ansari looked at William with an expression of absolute disgust. Congratulations, Mr. William. You just proved my point better than I ever could. Turning to Sarah, Al-Ansari said gently, Well, Miss Sarah, it seems you are now free to have lunch with me, and I can assure you it will be the last meal you have as a former employee of this company. Mia took her mother's hand and whispered, It's okay, Mommy. Sometimes, when a door closes, a much bigger window opens. Al-Ansari smiled at the girl. Your daughter is very wise, Miss Sarah, very wise indeed. And as William watched in increasing despair, Al-Ansari escorted Sarah and Mia toward the elevators, leaving behind a room full of executives who were finally beginning to understand the disaster that had just happened. The building's cafeteria had never received a client like Sheikh Al-Ansari. Employees from various companies in the building whispered and took discreet photos as the billionaire sat at a simple table, conversing animatedly with a woman and her 9-year-old daughter as if they were old friends. Al-Ansari had insisted that Sarah and Mia order whatever they wanted, and now watched amused as Mia explained the menu options to her mother in 3 different languages. The girl had offered to translate for Al-Ansari too, until he explained, laughing, that his English was perfectly fluent. Mia, Al-Ansari said after they finished eating, you mentioned you study alone in the company library. Tell me about your dreams. What do you want to be when you grow up? Mia's eyes lit up. I want to be an ambassador, Sir Sheikh. I want to help different countries understand each other better. I think many problems in the world happen because people don't communicate properly. Al-Ansari was impressed by the maturity of the answer. And what made you think of that? Well, Mia explained, when I study languages, I also learn about cultures, and I realized that people from different countries basically want the same things: to take care of their families, to have dignified work, to live in peace. But sometimes they fight because they can't explain that to each other. Sarah observed her daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. Mia spoke of dreams that seemed impossible for a girl of her background, but Al-Ansari was listening as if every word were precious. And you, Ms. Sarah? Al-Ansari turned to Sarah. What were your dreams when you were Mia's age? Sarah hesitated before replying. I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to tell stories of people who normally don't have a voice, but life took other paths. Life isn't over yet, Al-Ansari said gently. You're only 32. There's still time for many dreams. Al-Ansari took a sip of his special Arabic coffee that he had sent his assistant to fetch from a nearby restaurant. Ladies, I have a proposal for you, but first, I need you to understand something about me. He leaned forward, speaking with the seriousness of someone sharing important secrets. I wasn't born rich. My father died when I was 12, and my mother raised 7 children working as a seamstress. I started selling spices in a marketplace when I was 14. Mia listened attentively as Al-Ansari continued. I managed to build my first business at 20, but I never forgot where I came from. Today, I have companies in 15 countries, but my most important project is to find talented young people from working class families and give them opportunities I wish I had had at their age. Sarah felt her heart race. She didn't know where this conversation was going, but she could feel it was something big. "Mia," Alansari said, turning to the girl, "how would you like to study at an international school where you could learn any language you wanted with native teachers from each country?" Mia's eyes widened. That would be amazing, but it must cost a lot of money. What if I told you it wouldn't cost? "Anything for you?" Alansari asked with a smile. "I have an educational foundation that offers full scholarships for exceptional children. We're talking about school, housing, food, books, educational trips, everything paid for." Sarah felt tears well up in her eyes. "Sir Sheikh, that's very generous, but I couldn't accept charity." "It's not charity," Alansari interrupted firmly. "It's an investment. I invest in people with extraordinary potential, and your daughter is one of the brightest minds I've ever encountered." Alansari turned to Sarah. "And you, Miss Sarah, would you be interested in a position in my American company? I need someone to lead our social responsibility program, someone who understands what it means to fight for opportunities." Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. "But sir, I don't have a university degree. I don't have experience in—" "You have something much more valuable," Alansari interrupted. "You have character. You have real experience facing adversity with dignity." Alansari pulled out his phone and showed some photos. "This is the school where Mia would study. It has students from 40 different countries, and this is our office where you would work." The photos showed facilities that seemed straight out of movies: a 3-story library, state-of-the-art laboratories, dormitories that looked more like small apartments. Sarah had never dreamed that places like that existed in the real world. "There's one condition," Alansari said, "becoming serious again. I want Mia to use her talents to help other children. She would be a kind of student ambassador, helping new international students adapt. And I want you to use your position to identify other working-class families who deserve opportunities." Mia looked at her mother, then at Alansari. "Sir Sheikh, can I ask a question?" "Of course, dear. Why are you doing this for us? You don't even know us." Alansari smiled, and for the first time since entering the company building, his eyes showed genuine tenderness. "Because when I was your age, a kind person gave me a chance. A wealthy merchant saw that I could do calculations in my head faster than other boys and offered me work in his office. Without that opportunity, I would still be selling spices in the marketplace." He paused, looking out the cafeteria window. "But mainly because in 1 hour of conversation with the two of you, I saw more honor, intelligence, and genuine kindness than in years dealing with executives like William." Sarah finally found her voice. "If we accept, when would we start?" "Mia can start classes next Monday," Alansari said. "The school has a special immersion program for students who join mid-year, and you can start in my office when you feel ready." Alansari leaned forward. "I know it's a big decision. You need time to think." Sarah looked at Mia, who had tears of joy in her eyes. Then she looked at Alansari, this extraordinary man who had appeared in their lives like a guardian angel. "Sir Sheikh," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "we accept." At that moment, across the cafeteria window, they could see William leaving the building carrying a box with his personal belongings. Alansari followed Sarah's gaze and smiled. "Oh yes," he said casually, "I forgot to mention. The company's shareholders called me 20 minutes ago. It seems they decided to make some changes in the company's leadership. And as William got into his expensive car for the last time as CEO, Sarah and Mia began the first afternoon of their new lives. 3 hours after lunch at the cafeteria, the company's office looked like a sinking ship. James was on the phone with furious investors, trying to explain how $500 million had disappeared in a single morning. William had been escorted out of the building at 2:30 p.m. after an emergency meeting that lasted only 15 minutes. 15 minutes to undo 20 years of career. His dismissal was immediate, without special severance pay, without a transition period. The truth was that Al-Ansari had done much more than simply refuse to invest in the company. During lunch, he had made a series of phone calls that shook the corporate world. First, he called the CEO of a major fund, then the director of the largest international investment fund. The message was always the same. The company is led by people without character. I do not recommend any business association with them. In a matter of 2 hours, the company had lost not only Al-Ansari's investment, but also 3 other international contracts. The total value was over $1.5 billion. Meanwhile, Sarah was in a luxurious meeting room, signing documents that changed her life forever. Al-Ansari had kept his word with impressive efficiency. In 3 hours, he had arranged everything. Mia's enrollment in the International Academy, Sarah's position as Director of Social Responsibility, and an apartment in a desirable city neighborhood. Ms. Sarah, Al-Ansari's assistant, said, "The agreement includes an initial salary of $80,000 annually, plus full health benefits for you and Mia." Sarah had to hold on to the chair. In 5 years at the company, she earned $18,000 annually without benefits. Now, she was signing a contract that transformed her life into something she hadn't even dared to dream of. "Is there anything else?" Al-Ansari said, entering with Mia. Mia just took the academy test. She tested at university level in 5 different subjects. Sarah felt as if she were living a dream. 6 hours ago, she was cleaning bathrooms and worrying about hiding her daughter. Now, she was signing contracts that guaranteed a better future than anything she had imagined. At that moment, Al-Ansari's phone rang. It was James from the company. "Sheikh Al-Ansari," the voice was filled with despair. "I ask you to reconsider. William has been dismissed. We have new leadership now." Al-Ansari put him on speakerphone. "Mr. James, real change doesn't happen overnight. You tolerated William's behavior for years, knowing how he treated employees like Miss Sarah." Al-Ansari hung up and turned to Sarah. "The company will need to hire a new cleaning team. The company they used found other, more respectful clients." 3 floors below, employees watched from the window as a black limousine drove Sarah and Mia away. Many had witnessed how William treated Sarah over the years. In the limousine, Mia held her mother's hand. "Mommy, do you think this is real?" Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand. "Yes, honey, it's real. Because sometimes when you do the right thing for long enough, the universe finally rewards you." Al-Ansari smiled. "Ladies, welcome to your new life." 1 year later, Mia walked the halls of the International Academy with confidence. At 10 years old, she spoke 9 languages fluently and had been elected student ambassador by her classmates from 40 different countries. "Bonjour, Mia!" shouted Pierre, a French boy, who had arrived 2 months earlier speaking only French. Mia had helped him adapt, and now he spoke English fluently. "Sabah el khair, Pierre," Mia replied in Arabic. "Are you practicing as I suggested?" "Yes, and Mandarin too," Pierre replied proudly. That afternoon, Mia had a special video conference. Once a month, she talked to children from public schools, telling her story. "Hi, everyone," she said to dozens of curious little faces from a school in a different state. "A year and a half ago, I was studying in a public school like you." A girl asked, "Is it true that you speak 9 languages?" "It's true, but I learned them all by myself, using free videos from the internet and books from the library." Meanwhile, Sarah was in a luxurious meeting in a major city, coordinating the Al-Ansari Holdings scholarship program. In 1 year, she had helped 127 children from working-class families get scholarships to private schools. "The report is impressive, Sarah," Al-Ansari said. 96% of the children are among the best students. They just needed a chance. Sarah replied, "When you give opportunities to children who want to learn, they fly." Al-Ansari observed her with admiration. "I want you to lead our international expansion of the program. You would be an executive vice president with responsibility over 15 countries." Sarah couldn't hide her emotion. 2 years ago, she was cleaning bathrooms. Now she was being invited to lead international programs. Across town, William was in a smaller office trying to rebuild his career. After 8 months unemployed, he found a position as a sales manager, 3 levels below what he used to be. Sometimes William would pass by the academy just to see Mia. She was always smiling, surrounded by friends. And whenever he saw her, he remembered when a 9-year-old girl had shown more class than he had ever demonstrated. At night, Sarah and Mia maintained their tradition of talking about what they had learned. "Mommy," Mia said, "I talked into a girl from a country in Africa who speaks 6 African languages. And you?" "I learned that we are going to help build a school in a developing nation where working children can study at night." "You know what's funny, Mommy? If that man hadn't been cruel, maybe we would never have met Mr. Al-Ansari." Sarah reflected. "Sometimes bad things push us to where we really should be." 6 months later, they were on a plane to a distant country to inaugurate the first international center of the Al-Ansari Foundation. Mia would give the opening speech in 3 languages. "2 years ago," Mia said in perfect Arabic, "I was just a girl who accompanied my mother to work. This center is a promise that origin does not determine destiny." The audience rose, moved. Al-Ansari whispered to Sarah, "Your daughter will be president someday." That night, Sarah was on the balcony overlooking the city when Al-Ansari joined her. "Do you have any regrets?" he asked. "Not even the difficult years, nor the humiliations, because everything brought me here. It taught me to value opportunities and never forget where I came from." Al-Ansari smiled. "That's why I knew you were special. It's not just intelligence, it's character." There, Sarah understood that her story was not about a cleaner who became rich. It was about a woman who never lost her dignity, a girl who never stopped dreaming, and a man who believed that every human being deserves the chance to show their greatness. If this story touched your heart, take a deep breath and think about how many Mias there are out there, hidden behind doors the world never opens. How many mothers like Sarah are giving their all in silence, just waiting for a chance, an opportunity, a look of respect. If you believe that origin does not define destiny, that talent can come from anywhere, and that respect is the minimum, then this story is for you. Leave a comment saying, "I see the invisible," to show that you also see those the world ignores. And take the opportunity to tell what moved you most in this story. Remember, sometimes the person who will change everything is where no one wants to look.